Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to reintroduce to you now. Courtney Luna is a returning guest on our show. Be sure to check out her first appearances on episode 402 and 771 of Boundless Body Radio. Courtney Luna is a former yacht chef turned stay at home mom and carnivore content creator. She shares her recipes and health journey as she heals her body with a carnivore diet. Courtney is the author of the new cookbook, Carnivore in the Kitchen, a fresh and fun approach to meat based meals. Her book provides curated meal plans and grocery lists, which take the stress out of answering everyone's favorite question, what's for dinner? The carnivore lifestyle can work for the whole family. And in a section devoted to an animal foods based diet for kids, which also includes fruit, Courtney explains how to emphasize nutrition without demonizing foods. Whether you're a carnivore diet devotee or are just looking to try something new, Carnivore in the Kitchen encourages experimentation and innovation by inspiring you to go beyond traditional meat dishes and discover new preparations and delicious flavor combinations. You can find her primarily on YouTube and on Instagram at It's Courtney Luna. Courtney Luna, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you back to Boundless Body Radio.
Thanks for having me. I started getting like the nervous giggles. I don't know why. Oh my gosh, I'm a
Uh,
little nervous for this topic.
It's going to be fun. It's definitely something trending. By the time this episode comes out, the trend will probably be like far over. We'll be discussing something else absolutely ridiculous. We've already had a few episodes published on this by a few different people, including yourself, which we'll get into in a second. But I do just have to tell you, the last interview that I just did, the episode dropping right before you, was with Jenny Mittich, who just came out with her book, the Complete Carnivore. And I asked her the question, like, how was the process of like, writing a book and how did that all come about? And she mentioned you and the discussion you guys had. And in my brain, I'm like, okay, here we go. We're going to get some spicy takes here because we've got two competing authors now in the same space. They're competing with each other, trying to steal each other's money. But I have to report back. She did say many nice things about you. So no spice, unfortunately, but it was very sweet.
She better. I mean, geez, one of my good friends. Yeah, no, I actually I have an interview. She was on my channel. It comes out this Sunday. So we talked about
Oh,
her book
awesome.
and it's doing well. I'm actually like, I don't know if I should tell her this or announce it to the internet, but I've been every so often going on Amazon and seeing how she's ranking and she's doing great and she just passed me. So she just left me in the dust. Her book's doing better than mine today. So
Terrible. Do you want me to delete the episode I did with her?
yeah, let's just cancel that. Come on, there's no
Let's just
no.
trash her. Maybe that will be the topic of discussion today. She'll say nice things about you, and we'll just turn around and talk smack behind her back.
Oh my gosh. No, I'm so stoked for her. Like it's an amazing book. I even told her I'm like, what an overachiever because it's two books in one. And like you get a whole Carnivore 101 and then you get a cookbook as well. And I'm like, that's like, I'm offended that you did that because it's better than mine.
I wouldn't say better. I'll tell you what I told her. Like, I told you this before too. Everybody has their own little flavor. It's not just like we're coming up with different recipes. Yours are based in a certain way, and hers are based in a certain way. And it's very difficult to come up with as many recipes as everybody's coming up with. It's not just that. It's that you have a different way of explaining things. And Jenny, she's like you. She's very sweet. She's very kind. Obviously, I knew you were friends for a very, very long time, but she's very data based and science based
Mm.
and wants to do that explanation. And you've kind of said from the beginning, I don't really want to get into that stuff.
I can't
I
even
appreciate
understand
it.
it.
You know more than you think you do, but your approach is just like, I'm going to leave that for other people, and we're just going to keep this really simple. I love that she included myths, outside of the carnivore community, but also contrasted that with myths inside the carnivore community, saying like, all fruit is bad, all vegetables are trying to kill you, all that kind of thing, which I really appreciated. But in that same light, like we mentioned in the introduction, your section about how to do this with kids is phenomenal, and you explain it in such a cool way as a mom that is very relatable. So I really appreciate your style, while acknowledging that she did an amazing job writing that book. But so did you. Your book's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just excited. And more people are coming out with books. Like I know a handful of friends that have them coming out. And I think it's amazing. There's room out there for all of us. It's not like a and. No, what is it? It's not an or. It's not Courtney's book or Jenny's. It's an and. So you collect them all. There's room on your shelf for everyone's books. Yeah, it's just very exciting to see this community growing too. And, more people becoming interested in changing their life and eating more meat.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. But it sets up an awkward situation in the future, which is the topic of discussion today, which is called quitting carnivore. At one point, you're going to have to print some type of redaction on your book and say, "Nope, I actually quit. I'm eating all a bunch of fruits and vegetables and 500 grams of carbohydrates a day," and you're going to have to try to fit that into the book you've already written.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a vegan cookbook next. Yeah, so many people are making changes lately, and it's wild. People are going like from the other end of the pendulum. Like they're going from carnivore to high carb, low fat, and my head's been spinning. And I tried to dabble with adding carbs because I'm like, oh, everyone else is. My sugar addicted brain was like, yes, let's try that, knowing damn well I've already tried to eat everything in moderation. And so, yeah, I've been spiraling lately because I've let all these other opinions get in my head and it's just not been serving me well at all.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I appreciate that, and it's interesting to kind of hear what we're hearing from the community. And it's not everybody. I love how you and Sarah Franklin did an episode on this, and I thought you guys approached this topic in a really respectful way, in a great way that helped give me some insight into some of these things. But really, it's like we see a headline that says everybody's quitting carnivore. My journey away from carnivore, and it's coming from influencers. Some of them who have been in the space for a few years, other people who have been in the space for over a decade or almost 2 decades, like a very, very long time. And we need to, I don't know how to like ride this line, but we need to acknowledge that everybody has a different journey, and we have different things that serve us for a time, and then not. And then, we need to be honest about things to a certain extent. But also, like, these people are sending a message out to other people who have been following them for a really long time, and people like you've written a book on carnivore, and it still makes you like a little bit confused, and you're a little bit spinning and wondering about some of these things. So yeah, I just wanted to set that up by saying, like, some people in our community are coming out, and it's kind of that clickbait type of a headline that says quitting carnivore. I'm going to open the discussion with you in the same way that you asked Sarah. Is everybody quitting carnivore?
I know. And I feel like I got a lot of slack on like that title. And to me, like I'm not a clickbaity person. You can tell by my lack of views. Like I'm not I'm not creating clickbait to get views. In my It's just how I felt at the time. It To me, it felt like everyone's quitting carnivore. And of course, everybody is not. But there was like a handful of people I looked up to and trusted their opinion that were quitting carnivore. And to me, it just felt very loud and it felt like everyone's quitting when in actuality, it's not everybody. But yeah, I mean, there's, a good handful of people that have been in this space a long time that are now adding carbs in. And it's made my head spin. But what's so interesting is I feel like if we would have had this conversation a different day or even a couple hours ago, it would be a totally different conversation because I just interviewed Steven from the UK Carnivore. I just had him on my channel and he's explaining like different lab markers and where he thinks they're interpreting the data wrong and why they're adding in carbs. And it made me feel better, honestly. Like hearing his thoughts, I'm like, okay, because here I am, tried to add carbs back in. It's not doing well. Trying to get back on carnivore, but I have doubts because of the other people that are saying we shouldn't be carnivore anymore. So that's been in my head. Okay, like I need to get back on track, but what's back on track if all these experts are saying we shouldn't be carnivore long term? And so just hearing his thoughts on analyzing the blood work and like they're looking at A1C and glucose and all that, and he kind of explained it on how it's actually working and why our body is doing what it's doing and why the numbers are that way and how like the lab ranges aren't for us. It's for like the standard American diet people. So he put some things into perspective where I'm like, okay, that actually makes me feel more confident on carnivore that maybe I'm not messing things up by eating this way because I mean, and we're our own experiment too. Like I tried adding carbs, it's not going well. I'm up 20 pounds. I don't feel good about myself. My mental health isn't amazing, but that sugar monster had a hold on me and people's thoughts and opinions also got in the way too. So there's just a lot of noise out there, you know?
Wow. Wow. That's very interesting. I think you look amazing. I didn't know about like the weight gain and the sugar monster, any of that kind of stuff, but that is very real, for sure. And Stephen would be the perfect person to listen to when it comes to blood labs. He wrote that book about it last year. He's very scientifically minded as well and can get deep into the weeds there. So we'll be able to link him in the show notes if somebody wants to go a little bit deeper, surely, than we're going to go in this conversation. But that is interesting. And as part of that, let's go back and kind of hear your, how long you've been carnivore, why you decided to go carnivore, what benefits you noticed, and yeah, when did the doubts start to kind of creep in for you?
Yeah, so I've been carnivore 3 years in May, and I didn't expect to get all the health benefits out of it that I did. I went into it just hoping to lose weight, and, a month in, I'm like, "Wow, my mental health is better." Like, "Oh, my skin's clearing up." I had, horrible acne forever. So that was amazing, and I just felt better overall. And, first 2 years, like, were easy. Like, I was never tempted by fruit that my kids had or anything. And after the 2-year mark, I feel like it got a little, I don't know if it's self-sabotage or you kind of just like relax a bit, like, "Oh, I lost all this weight. I have these health benefits. Oh, let me just have a bite of this, a bite of that." And for me, that's a slippery slope. And then I would say where the noise got really loud was, I guess, around July, June. I don't know, whenever like the sugar diet became really popular. And I had people coming to me that were carnivore and they're like, "I tried this. I feel amazing. I lost weight." So I'm like, "Okay, like, I guess I'm going to give it a shot." So I tried it for 2 days, and it I did lose a couple pounds, but after that, that's what I just spiraled from there. Cause in my head, I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm going to have, let me add some carbs back in. Let's just like go to sushi." And it's just, and even during this whole time of gaining 20 pounds, it wasn't like I was out there eating pizza and cookies. Like, I was having fruit. I was having some rice, maybe some of the masa chips I get my kids. Like, it's stuff that I had in the house for my kids, and my kids, I think, eat pretty well, pretty healthy. So it wasn't even like I was eating all this junk food. But that one little like taste, I don't know. It's just been wild. So yeah, ever since then, that damn sugar diet like totally screwed me up. And I haven't been able to get back on track for more than a week since that.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so how do you define a carnivore diet? I feel like this is like semantic a little bit, and I like to use the hyper carnivore definition whenever I'm talking about carnivore, just so we don't have to get too worked up. But I could easily see how a lot of people out there could, you wouldn't say you were vegan, I don't think, if you were like cheating a little bit or eating eggs and dairy, you would say vegetarian. How do you think of a carnivore diet semantically when somebody says they're on carnivore or they're off carnivore? How do you tend to define it?
Yeah, for me, carnivore is anything that is an animal or came from an animal. So any kind of meat, dairy, and then, of course, for some reason, coffee and spices get a free pass. But to me, carnivore is just eating an animal and anything that comes from it.
And then no coffee, no spices, no anything else.
I would say that. Yeah, I would include that because I do have
Okay.
coffee and I do have some spices here and there.
Okay. So again, by your definition, would you say that you're on the carnivore diet when you're having meat and coffee and spices?
Yes, and
Okay.
dairy.
Okay. Gotcha. And again, like when I say, okay, a hyper carnivore is like 75% of the calories or more from animal products, that leaves that 25% of wiggle room that kind of can and captures, the coffee that I have, the spices that I have, a low, carbohydrate sauce that people can have. But I realize again, I think a lot of people out there think that everybody, if they're doing carnivore, they're doing the strictest version of carnivore. They're doing something like a lion diet or something where there's like literally zero plants any of the time, kind of a thing. And it sounds like yours is at least a little bit more open than that.
Yeah, I honestly feel like I don't think there's a lot of people that are actually strict lion diet. I think maybe if you're having like autoimmune issues and you need to do that at first and add things back in, but I think the majority of people eating a carnivore diet are probably having some dairy. I mean, I can only think of a few that are like, I would say so strict would be like Baker and Chafee, and just even like other people I talk to in the carnivore space. I think a lot of people kind of land around ketovore, or they try to be carnivore, but maybe they have some ketovore things that like slip in here and there. I think it's actually rare to have somebody be very strict.
Okay, gotcha. And some of the people that are making the biggest splash as far as like the quitting carnivore, um, I mean, we can't really say, we don't really know, but according to you and your understanding, do you suppose that they had also been on a similarly kind of stricter version of a carnivore diet for as long as they had?
Um, yeah, I guess so. I don't know. It's hard to tell like what people are really doing like off camera too. I mean, you're
Right.
showing us what you're eating, but what are you doing on the weekend? So, yeah, I'm trying to think of like the people who are off carnivore right now. Like, yeah, I think most of them were saying they were just regular carnivore with dairy and meat and stuff.
Okay, gotcha. And now I don't follow too many of these. So again, it's just an honest question. Are they actively promoting the idea that carnivore is not the best thing for everybody, or people can't do it long term? Are those two kind of messages that are being put out there?
I am seeing a lot of them say it's a good tool and to use it as an elimination diet, add things back in, but not necessarily recommending it as a forever thing. And then I'm seeing some people say that that is absolutely not the way to go, that we shouldn't be low carb or keto, that it should be high carb and low fat, which I feel like is so interesting because are we like full circle? Like I feel like we used to do that in the 90s, right? It was everything was 100-calorie snack packs. Like everything was low calorie, low fat and carbs. So I'm also confused how these people are doing like the pendulum swinging the other way. How are we going from carnivore, which is, a high amount of fat to 20 to 30 grams of fat and 2 to 400 grams of carbs. Like it's crazy to me.
Isn't that what got most people to carnivore anyway? Like they
That
tried the 90s, we did the snack wells. Like,
that's what I thought. And that's why I'm confused. And I'm not knocking the people that are eating if that's working for you, great. So I don't mean this as a dig. I'm just thinking out loud because I did have an open mind to adding carbs. So I'm not saying they're wrong for doing that. Hi, look at me. I'm stuck with the carb monster. But that's where I'm also at too. Like, wait, didn't we used to do that? And then we learned about carnivore. So now we know better that we do need that fat. So it's very confusing.
that is really confusing. Okay, I need to follow those people a little bit more. Apparently, the most common pattern that I notice is that people, they start standard American, they start to whittle things down more and more and more. Some people can stop at, paleo, they can stop at low carb, they can stop at keto, which is just progressively getting carbohydrates lower and lower. And then they, some people, for whatever reason, decide to try carnivore diet. And I do agree with the idea that this is a tool. It doesn't have to be used forever. For some people, it can and it should. It seems like I don't see anything wrong with somebody doing it long term. And there's people like my friend Robin. Robin Dobbins, who's like, if she has a pretty minimal amount of carbohydrates, her bipolar starts to come back. So she's kind of locked into this thing, regardless of whatever her cholesterol numbers come back or whatever. But I do notice that a lot of people, like, they can go through whatever period of carnivore and then they can kind of open things up a little bit. They might find like, okay, let me experiment with an avocado. Maybe some people can have honey or fruit. I I can have fruit. It just makes me really hungry and it makes me crave other crap that I know I don't really want. So I tend to avoid that stuff. But I do see the most, what I'm trying to say, the most common pattern I see is somebody goes carnivore and they end up, if you want to call it ketovore or keto whatever, where they're still getting a vast amount of their calories from animal products, but they're just including a few more plant foods that seem to be doing well. That's a little bit different than what you're describing as far as what these people are doing.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach too for some people or most people. Like we don't all need to be strict carnivore. There's some people that I feel like do, whether you have like health issues or like mental health issues. But yeah, I think landing at a more ketovore place is okay. Like I think on paper, if I were to add things back in, having some sauerkraut, having some avocado, maybe a little salsa, like I don't think that's harmful. But sometimes in my mind, I feel like, okay, I'm allowing those back in. Then I'm going to allow this back in. Like, oh, I'm not carnivore anymore because I'm having this. So I'm going to have a bite of this and a bite of that, and it just snowballs. So that's where I struggle.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's where I would struggle too, and I have to be very careful with things. Like recently, I've gotten myself into like salted cashews, thinking like, okay, a handful of this a night is going to be fine. And it ends up being 5 handfuls, 6 handfuls, 7 handfuls. And my digestion sucks. And it's like, why am I doing this? And I've been able to kind of tighten that up a little bit since then. But what I'm hearing promoted also is it's going back to carbohydrates. It seems to be a lot of fruit, for example. That seems to be one that people are doing a lot of. And it's like I said, it's not like allowing a few other plant foods back in the diet. It's like you're going hard in the paint with some of these like really high sugar, high fructose type foods. Is that kind of what you're noticing?
Yes. Yeah, I don't even think yeah, the people I'm thinking of are at least, yeah, having a lot of carbs and it being fruit. I mean, anywhere between 2 and 400 grams of carbs. Like I feel like that's a lot of sugar and fructose to be putting in your body. And I think about like Saladino where at least he's burning it off. He's, surfing for 4 hours a day or whatever, like he's putting that to use. So maybe it's different for somebody that's like so active, but me, I don't know. It's just, but I also don't like, I don't want to eat chicken breast just so I can have 400 grams of carb, like I'd rather eat a fatty meat than have chicken and a cantaloupe. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. What would concern you about eating, that much sugar? For you, again, you said like you kind of have what I have. You have a little. It's really hard to not have a lot or to want other things that really shouldn't be getting into. What other things concern you about people that are bringing back that many grams of carbohydrates? Like you said, Paul Saladino was probably the first major one several years ago who literally wrote the book Carnivore Code and talked about how bad plants were, and then all of a sudden flipped to like fruit juice also. Like totally different with like lots of sugar. Like what things would concern you about most people when they start to introduce more of that fruit component, especially in those quantities?
Yeah, and again, I'm not good with like the science, but glycation is one, and I can't tell you anything about that. But what I do know is that it can age you. It's whatever, it's the fructose latching on to something. I don't know what it's doing, but having the carbs, the high carbs, and the fat probably isn't ideal. So yeah, I think the concerns, I mean, to me, that just turns on the food noise. And sure, I'm not going to binge on 12 apples, but the one apple is going to lead to cravings for something else. So I think you kind of just need to be mindful about what you, and Dr. Lisa says, like what you're having sober behavior around. So you might be able to have a handful of berries and go about your day. But for me, freaking dried mango, okay, I cannot control myself around dried mango. So I think you just have to also know your triggers. If you are having some carbs in, just like know yourself. And then the whole abstainer versus moderator thing, I think some of us just need to abstain from those foods that are going to be triggering. A lot of people can moderate. They can have a donut and go about their day. I can't. I'm going to eat the whole dozen. Or if there's only one, I'm going to probably get in my car and go try and find more, like a freaking addict.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, me too. What are some of the common reasons that people give? Maybe it's in the data as far as like blood work. Maybe they don't feel any symptoms, but something is looks off. Like you were talking with Stephen about today, or some of maybe the more like physical symptoms or signs that people are citing to say like I've gotten off a carnivore. This has gotten a lot better. Like how do you see those things? And what are you noticing there?
Yeah, I see a lot of people saying it lowered my thyroid, it tanked my sex hormones. They're talking about maybe like a slightly higher A1C and like their glucose or insulin being higher. And yeah, so that's kind of what we talked about with Steven, and he kind of explained a little bit more why those numbers are the way they are. Like if you are getting like a little bit higher of an A1C, he talked about the whole like blood cell lifespan, and that I'm so bad about regurgitating information, but when I was listening to him, I'm like, okay, this makes sense. And he mentioned like your lower, like the T3, like that might be lowered a little bit on carnivore, and it's not necessarily a dysfunction. It's just I wrote down the word, a normal adaptation. And what's interesting, he also pointed out, is their argument is also gluconeogenesis is so, stressful on the body, but the T3 is linked directly to gluconeogenesis. So if you raise your T3, then that's going to like lead to like it's going to improve the gluconeogenesis. So it's like, which one do you want? If they're saying you don't want gluconeogenesis, but then you want to raise your thyroid or your testosterone, that's going to help that. So that kind of doesn't make sense with their argument too. So yeah, it's interesting. And I don't want to like I understand that people are having symptoms and that's why they might have made some changes. But other things that he was mentioning where maybe you're now eating enough or now you're having, more like your electrolytes are balanced more because you're eating fruit that has water. So yeah, I think there's like a lot of things that could explain why they were having these numbers.
Got it. Okay. So when it comes to the blood sugar, numbers, like, your fasting blood glucose, what you mentioned, the A1C number, it's definitely something that I've noticed in the community that sometimes can happen. But what I'm talking about is more like, your blood sugar used to be 85 and now it's like 95, or maybe it's 100 in the morning. So it's higher, but it's not like you're not diabetic or anything. Same with A1C. Like I've seen people drift their A1C up, from 5.2 to 5.3 to 5.4. And we hear the arguments about, is the red blood cell staying alive longer? And that's why it's getting more glycation on it. But again, I don't see a lot of like physical symptoms from that. And I'm not seeing numbers that are going like crazy high. Like I don't see somebody's blood glucose like double. Have you come in contact with that?
Right. No, and I think that's a good point. I think it's just going up a little bit and people are freaking out because maybe they're not quite understanding why it's doing that and why maybe a blood glucose of 100 isn't that concerning. So,
For you personally, I'm just curious about this. For you personally, do you put a lot of value into blood markers?
I mean, not really. Maybe I should, but no, I mean, I'll test my glucose and ketones here and there just because I have one. And I went years without doing it. Um, But no, I guess I feel like if you're having symptoms, then that could probably be helpful and you can look into what's going on and make some changes. Not saying carbs are the change you need to make, but just looking at the numbers for that. But I think if you're feeling good and you're feeling amazing, then why would you do something different because of a number? Where who's making those guidelines anyways, someone to sell more statins?
Yeah, no, I think about it the same way that you do. I have less and less value, I think, in blood markers now than I thought I used to, because I thought I knew what everything meant. And yeah, maybe, we know that if you have, a good pattern of HDL cholesterol, that's generally thought of as a good thing. But then you talk to cholesterol experts and they don't even know what HDL really truly does. Like it's so hard to pin these things down that it's like, I wonder about the people that are doing it like you said, like they don't have a symptom, but they get a number, they get the number back, and now they're freaked out about something that they weren't previously freaked out about. Like, is the cortisol load from being freaked out about that worth, is that juice worth the squeeze as far as, getting those numbers done when who does make the number? We don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Yeah, I think there's just a lot of misunderstanding, I think.
Gotcha. And so I put that one in one bucket. The other bucket I kind of put more of the other things in is what you mentioned, like the thyroid, the sex hormones. What kind of symptoms do people talk about, like being long-term carnivore and noticing issues there as well?
Yeah, I see them say like fatigue, hair loss. I feel like that's it. But to me, I don't know. I think those can be for most people easily fixed with maybe changing macros up or eating enough. I mean, I feel like you're going to have hair loss no matter what diet you do if you're losing weight. Like it's just a stressor on the body. As far as fatigue, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's just a difference of macros if you're not eating enough or getting enough protein or you're not getting the correct fat for your body. I don't know. I feel like there's also some other troubleshooting that could happen.
Yeah. Okay. So, is that the kind of category that Saladino kind of talked about when he first went off of carnivore? Wasn't it fatigue and certain things that he was noticing, like maybe with his testosterone, or maybe it was hair loss or something like that?
I know he said low testosterone. I'm maybe fatigue too. And then I remember I never watched it, but I saw Judy Cho do a whole video on it. And I think her thing is that he's just eating too much organ meat and he's having vitamin A toxicity. So,
I was going to ask you about that too. Do some of the people that have quit carnivore, again, you don't know, you're not following them around 24/7, monitoring what they're eating, but do you know at least, are they, in general, are they people that promote eating a lot of organ meats?
no, I
I
haven't.
didn't think so.
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. And then on that note, I've always been a little bit confused about this. When I agree with you, I think there are other ways that people can troubleshoot things, but what is inherently magic or special when it comes to those issues as far as like fruit in particular? And again, like super high amounts of fruit all of a sudden, like is there like nutrients that we're missing? Is it the sugar that's restoring some of those things? In my mind, like I can't figure out why it's that those things in particular, and also that wouldn't cause issues on the back end with so many other things.
Yeah, and I think that's what's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out for them in the long run and what their numbers look like after they've been doing it for a while. So yeah, I guess it could just be you're maybe now eating enough because you're getting a lot of volume, but then I feel like you're going to be maybe not eating as much protein as you need. I don't know. It's just I'm going to be interested to see like what everyone's well, and I don't want to say what everyone's lab work looks like because I feel like that's putting too much emphasis on labs and numbers. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I guess it's just like how they're feeling, how they're looking, how they're aging. I feel like that you can tell a lot by a person just with what their appearance is. And I don't mean that in like a weird or rude way, but I feel like that's a lot of what people are saying about Saladino is they're like you can they're seeing that he's aging and they're saying it's because of the glycation. And it's like, well, it could be because he's in the sun all day surfing. But that's just another thing that they mentioned with the high amount of carbs.
Yeah. Okay. On the note of the macronutrients, this is another thing I wanted to ask you about. Where are you at these days with the fat to kind of protein ratio? It seems like, most people are on board with having at least a decent amount of protein. Some people are like have a very high amount of protein, which is fine. People have various opinions on how much fat, whether you should take a bite of butter or not, which I don't know if you knew this, but you've been confused. You've been accused of being a butter chomper, as it were, putting on a video from time to time. Where do you think issues between like the amount of fat and the amount of protein can also cause some of the things we're talking about today?
Yeah, I think finding like your fat threshold and the correct macros for your body are important. And I think it can take a little time to figure that out. And I think things change. I think as we go along on this journey, our macros change. Like when I first started, I was eating equal amounts of fat and protein. And I still think that's like a good idea. Like if you're going to give a blanket statement on where you should start with macros, I think that's a good place to start. It ends up being like a 70-30 split and then you adjust as needed. Some people feel better with higher fat, which would be 80-20, and some people a little bit leaner, which would be like 60-40 or 65. So I lost 45 pounds eating, equal parts fat and protein. But for right now, if I need to get back to tracking. I keep saying I'm going to do that too. And I'm not, but if I were to track right now, I would be a little bit higher protein than fat. So like I would be around, I would say like 130, 150 grams of protein. And my goal would be to have my fat like around 90. And that's what I'd like to do and give that a shot and see like how that works for me right now. Because while I love eating butter and I will have bites of butter, I don't think everyone needs to be eating 2 sticks of butter a day. Like there is such thing as calories. Like I feel like some reason in carnivore, everyone thinks that calories don't exist and you can eat as much as you want. And I don't think that's true. I think maybe things are different because your body is reacting, like treating these foods different, so maybe you can get away with a little more calories than you could if it was the same amount of calories in Oreos. But I definitely think calories still matter. We can't eat more than what our body is burning off.
Yeah, I agree. There's also perception around that, right? Like just because you post a video every now and again of you taking a bite of butter, I'm guessing that's you taking a bite of butter, not you eating that entire stick of butter. Or what everybody thought when keto started was like where keto got really popular was like people are melting sticks of butter in their coffee and they're eating piles of bacon. Like literally, I've never met anybody who has melted sticks of butter or just can live on piles of bacon. Like I put a tablespoon of butter in my coffee in the morning. I don't do much more than that. You do a little bit more and it kind of doesn't taste that good anyway. Like but there's the perception, right? Like if you have a little bit where everybody just thinks of you in the video, like, oh, you're finishing off that stick of butter. Like, no, she's not. She's having a bite. I do that from time to time too.
Yeah, and it's delicious. And yeah, so I think there's definitely a misconception and it's hard to share. Like, what do you suppose? It's weird. Okay, so I'm taking a video of me biting butter. Do I then like make in disclaimer, I'm not eating the whole thing. Like it's weird to like have to like explain things, but it's also like you are influencing people. So you don't want them to be influenced the wrong way, but I feel like there's also just some like maybe like lack of critical thinking skills. Like we're all
Yeah,
adults. Like
totally.
you need to like just make some smarter decisions and not just, assume things are happening that aren't.
Or eat a stick of butter and report back. You can email us here and let us know how it went and what you noticed afterwards. I've never done it. Okay, so on the note of the fat to protein, and it's something that we need to kind of adjust. You're right. Like it changes all the time, and it seems like an endless game of like guess and check. You know what I mean? Like the only way I got any math problems right is I just guessed a number and hopefully got one right. And you kind of have to do that because nobody can really tell you exactly what you should be eating, what's going to work for you today, what's going to work for you next week. In on that note, generally speaking, just like your own experience, other people you've talked to that have been carnivore, do you think we can really trust our innate sense of what really sounds good? Like I feel like there's a reason that some nights um I look at a sous vide ribeye and I'm like, I want the ribeye. And other times I look at the sirloin and I say, I want sirloin and a chicken breast. And obviously, those are going to have completely different fat to protein ratios. Do you notice that people tend to be able to trust what their body is telling them, what sounds good, whether salmon sounds really good today or whether a brisket sounds really good tomorrow? Like, what is your personal experience and other people you've talked to around that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like definitely there's a people that can do that. Like I would love to like, oh, trust my body, listen to my body. Okay, but my body sometimes wants things that it shouldn't have. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing because yeah, I do think and when I do track, I do give myself a little bit of wiggle room, I guess. Like I'm not like, oh, I am 130 grams of fat today because if I'm not feeling it, I'm not going to force myself to eat. And but if I am hungry on a day, like sometimes I might give into that a little bit more because, hey, it's going to balance out the lighter day. And maybe that's not correct. Like maybe you should be like strict. But when I use tracking, it's more so to make sure that I'm not going out of control. Like it kind of keeps me in check. Like, oh, am I actually hungry for this or am I just wanting to snack? So I think if you can use tracking, but also listen to what your body's craving and wanting and lean into that a little bit and just use the tracking not as like a hard rule like oh you are having salmon tonight when you really want a ribeye but just do it to just I don't know kind of reel things in a little bit and pay more attention to your hunger cues.
I think that's an amazing intention around tracking, and then that wiggle room I think is so important too because I don't think a lot of people realize like people who come up with these trackers and have these amazing apps. It's not like they're like researching and updating some of the numbers that have been used for some of them decades. Like, are you sure that this 4 ounces of chicken was the same as whatever 4 ounces of chicken somebody measured once in a lab? Like, it's not like they're like, oh, we should dust this off and like re-update this. Like, have apples changed the last 3 years or 5 years? Is your apple the same as the apple that they had and the same? Like, it's an unknowable thing. But when you're using it the way that you are to like help you stay on track, make sure you're hitting certain metrics at the very least, and giving yourself that wiggle room, I think that's the best way to use tracking.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And it's also hard, like, especially with steaks and their fatty steaks, like you don't know how much fat is in that ribeye, or, so it can be a little not totally accurate, but I think it's a good guide just to like help you be aware of like the choices you're making.
Yeah, got it. Okay, one other experience that I've noticed a lot of people talk about when they're, stopping a carnivore diet or they talk about the benefits of leaving or reintroducing carbohydrates is weight loss stalls or some people even gaining weight on carnivore. I've seen it happen where somebody says they're on carnivore, they claim they can't lose weight, they get off it, they reintroduce carbohydrates, and boom, all of a sudden they can lose weight, and it doesn't make sense in my brain. Maybe it's too simple of an explanation that I'm thinking of, but like, what have you noticed as far as people, as far as the weight loss goes, being in a stall, and that's a good justification to kind of get off carnivore?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak from experience. I've had many stalls, and going off of carnivore did not help. I think what I should have done was maybe switched up my macros a little bit, maybe hit the gym instead of hitting the carbs. I I was doing my best and I was closest to my goal when I was tracking my macros, when I was consistent in the gym, and when I was getting my steps in. And I was frustrated because I still had like 10 pounds to lose, but it wasn't coming off. And then I would kind of just give up. And I'm like, oh, I'm so burnt out. I'm trying. Like, I'm just tired of tracking, tired of doing all the things to get me there. And then I would stop doing the things that were working. So I think instead of adding in back carbs, is just make some other changes. How's your sleep? How's your stress? Are you getting morning light? Are you getting out and getting movement? Are you lifting weights? I think we should all be lifting heavy weights. If your fat is super high, maybe try lowering it for a little bit. If you've been high fat and moderate protein, why don't you switch that and up your protein and give that a shot? And just make, little changes like that before you throw in the carnivore towel.
Okay. Well, and again, I'm just asking you what your thoughts on this are. But like you acknowledged even in the beginning when you kind of tried the sugar diet, you did end up losing a few pounds. Do you know why? Like, was there ever an explanation of why that was going to happen? And Bronson Dant came on our show and kind of talked about the sugar diet and tried to explain it. I'm like, yeah, I can't remember exactly what the mechanisms were that they were talking about. But is there something again like magical about fruit or carbohydrates or sugar in general that can cause like a short-term weight loss?
From my understanding, it was the lack of protein. And I'm going to butcher the name. I want to say FGF21, something like that. So that's like being triggered with the lack of protein. So apparently, you can get that same response by doing a fat fast. So instead of having all the carbs and only carbs, you are having just only fat. So that could have been part of it. But it was interesting to have all those carbs and then lose weight. But my blood sugar was insane. I had a few moments where I didn't feel well because my blood sugar was like, I tested my glucose. It was like, I don't even remember, 190 or something. I'm like, this probably isn't healthy. Like, I don't think this is good. And it's almost like, I guess it was me getting caught up in a little bit of disordered eating, I guess, because I was stopping carnivore to try and do something else to lose weight. Um, but yeah, it didn't feel good. I didn't feel good doing it. And then it just triggered me to eat other things after that.
This is something you and Sarah were talking about, I recall from your video, and I thought it was quite interesting. Do you think we have a realistic sense of how we should all look and appear when we're in this world of like Instagram and models taking pictures on their very best day with the very best lighting? Do we have a skewed kind of thought of how we should look, or even a skewed idea of how we look when we look in the mirror and we see all the worst parts of ourselves? Like, you know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to ask with that question?
Yeah, totally. Because I think there's two ends of the spectrum. There's body positivity where they're glorifying obesity, and then you see the other end where everyone's turning to the right angle, sucking in, getting the right lighting, and they're not looking like that walking around. So there's definitely, yeah, you're seeing different things. And yeah, and like body image, I'm like frustrated at myself. Like what I was 20 pounds ago, I wish I was there. I can't believe I was disappointed with where I was then, because now looking back at pictures, I'm like, I remember feeling great too. Like when you're feeling chunky and your clothes don't fit, you don't feel good. But then 20 pounds ago, even though I still had some belly fat, I felt I felt slim and trim, even though I totally wasn't. And also, I think it's normal to have a little bit of belly fat. I mean, I would great have abs, but I don't think that's not normal. I don't mean that like in a bad way, but like our body naturally wants to hold on to fat, especially as women, like we're designed to, that there's going to be like a famine and we need to like have fat on our body to survive and we need to be able to reproduce. So I think we had these expectations that we need to have a flat stomach, six pack abs. And I don't think that's realistic. It's probably like what 1% of the population actually looks like that. I think it's more so, you know, trying to get most of it off because also you want to make sure you're not having visceral fat in your organs as well. But yeah, I think we all just like want to look and feel good. But I feel like that was a long-winded answer.
No, that was a great answer. I get twisted up in this as well. And I'll tell anybody who has an aesthetic goal, like you should have an aesthetic goal. I think that's fine. We all want to look good. I think we're a little bit skewed too far to one side as far as how we should look. If I think back on, how we would have evolved, how we would have looked in the past, I think what you said is correct. Like there may have been times that we didn't get a lot of food. We would have at least had to survive winters on something. And so, to have washboard abs in that situation like might look cool in a tribe, but I don't think it's going to be very helpful for somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's a good point. I wonder, like, I mean, maybe the men were probably ripped where they had washboard abs as cavemen, but I highly doubt the women did, at all. So that's
Yeah.
interesting.
And that reminds me, I probably should have asked you this a little bit earlier, but I will say I'm noticing more of a trend with people that are quitting carnivore. More of them are females that I've observed than there are males. Do you think there's anything to that? First of all, have you noticed that same thing? And second of all, do you think there's anything to that?
Yeah, I have seen a lot of women, and maybe because I see it in my comments too. Because I think we're more caught up with like the hormones and perimenopause and menopause and thyroid. Like I feel like that's just what we're looking at with our labs. And I don't know, I wonder how much of it is like sugar addiction. And just speaking for myself, I won't project that on anybody else, but it was exciting to think, oh, maybe carbs are the answer. Maybe I should add carbs back in. And that's what's going to like fix all my problems. Like I'm a sugar addict. Of course, I wanted that to happen, like carbs are delicious. So I wonder how many people did what I did and use that as an excuse to bring their drug of choice back in.
Yeah, that's a great answer and a really good segue. I kind of wanted to summarize some of the like concerns that you and I would both have as far as like somebody, jumping off of carnivore completely. That would be up there on one of my lists. Like that was the thing I was the most concerned about when Saladino was kind of the first major piece to fall. And he was like, fruit is great, honey's great, add all this dairy back in. And, I think he was pretty careful about the way he said it, but it's also like you tend to do what your favorite influencer wants to do, and not everybody, like you're right, is in the sunshine all the time surfing for a few hours a day, which supposedly he does. And so what I saw on the ground while I was doing coaching at that time was what you just described. It wasn't those super fit people that had the ability to burn off a lot of sugar. It was people reigniting sugar cravings and having a tough time getting out of that after having put in the work to go to carnivore anyway and get all that stuff out. So that would be like one of my number one concerns. You?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's just having that self awareness and knowing if you're an abstainer or a moderator. And it's hard. And if you are wanting to add in carbs, I would just pay attention to maybe some non triggering ones, like not sweet ones, like avocado, sauerkraut. I feel like that's it. Everything else is going to be, have a sweet flavor. Like I would love to have in some squash, but that's sweet and you put some butter on it. Like I will overeat that. So I think just, being self aware on what's triggering and what you can't have sober behavior around.
Yeah. Another concern that I would say would be up there, you also mentioned, would be mental health. People bringing in the carbohydrates, forgetting, the reason why they were carnivore and having issues with mental health. It sounds like that's a big concern of yours as well.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, I was not bringing back in processed foods. I was having whole foods, obviously way too much of it and high fat. So one could argue I introduced carbs back in incorrectly, but I wasn't even trying to introduce them back in. It like got a hold of me. But yes, my mental health got a little wonky there. And even just like a few months ago, I'm like, this is like gnarly, like just OCD intrusive thoughts about bad things happening to my kids. And like
Wow.
constantly, where I was even afraid, like we're going on the road in January, we are ditching our house, we are living in our van. And even just like maybe like a month ago, I'm like telling my husband, I'm like, I don't know if we should go. I'm like, I have such bad feelings about this trip. I'm like, I don't know if it's my intuition or if it's just anxiety. And at the time, I was still struggling with my food and I'm doing a lot better right now. But I feel so much better now. I don't feel like I did a month ago where I was like spiraling. Like it was not good. The dark thoughts were just constant. And that's just from whole foods. So is it like just too much? I mean, I don't know. They say like, inflammation of the brain leads to, depression and anxiety are linked to inflammation of the brain. So if having all these carbs are causing inflammation, even if they're whole foods, like, is that a thing? Can that do that? Or is it only Oreos? I don't know. But I was eating whole food carbs and was not mentally feeling good.
When you were in the middle of that, like in the middle of the spin, were you consciously aware that you were in the middle of kind of like spinning around, or was it just like kind of grabbing you almost like the sugar addiction was?
No, I was aware and yeah, just like wondering like, yeah, is this my intuition or is it anxiety? And I even knew in there, I'm like, it's probably because I'm not eating great right now. Like I was very aware of what I was doing, and it's almost like a vicious cycle, you know? So
That's why
yeah,
I asked.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. And then the last really kind of big problematic thing, obviously there's going to be several, but the last big one I would think would be the long-term ramifications. We know about insulin resistance. We know that carbohydrates can cause that. Insulin resistance leads to all kinds of different like chronic diseases, whether that manifests in somebody that's really healthy but they're still pre-diabetic, or somebody starts to have those mental issues that turn eventually into dementia or Alzheimer's. How is that impacting that kind of inflammation inside the arteries and all that stuff? That would be the other kind of major concern that I would have with somebody that is really leaving carbohydrate or leaving carnivore for good.
Yeah, I'd be concerned about that too. And so it'll be interesting to see how like everything plays out. I'd wonder if a lot of these people that are venturing away are going to come back at some point. Like maybe this is like a honeymoon phase, like they feel really good, things are changing. Like I wonder if anyone's going to be coming back. But I feel like that would be maybe hard for them to come back. I'm sure it was hard for them to leave. Like you've made your entire personality carnivore, low carb, keto, which is what I did accidentally. So when I was trying to introduce carbs, like it's the same like mental disconnect. So I feel like be hard to then again be like, no, I was wrong. I'm coming back to carnivore. So be interesting to see what happens.
Got it. Okay. And that's another really great segue of something I really wanted to ask you. You said your numbers aren't great. They're certainly higher than mine. Both of us are, creators. We create content as much as probably neither one of us really, has to look at ourselves in that light. That's what we do. That's what your channel is. So your book is content that you've created. Your channel is what you've created. What do you see as the responsibility of a creator to change their mind about something that can impact a lot of people? Is there a certain way that they should do that to say, like, this is my journey. I'm not recommending this for everybody, or everybody should do this, or it's the big headlines that you're trying to get more followers. You know what I mean? Like there seems to be like a, I don't know, more responsible way that somebody can change their mind about something. And, recognizing that you and I could change our minds about this, and we could do something different next week. Like, how do you see that kind of responsibility as a content creator for, changing your mind in a way that helps people understand, but also doesn't open the door for some of those potential harming effects for somebody who's in a different area of their life?
Yeah, I think it's just important to have an open mind and not be dogmatic. And I feel like it's easy to become a little dogmatic in the carnivore space because you've tried everything else, you've had all these health issues, and then you finally find the one thing that makes you feel good. So you want to shout it from the rooftops, and you think everything else is like so unhealthy. So I think just having an open mind, I think that's what science is about, is you're always questioning science. And yeah, maybe just labeling it as like this is my journey and not saying this is what everyone has to do, because that can be off-putting as someone who's consuming content. If you're being condescending in how you're sharing your message and saying, and you feel like as a viewer you're feeling like, gosh, everything I'm doing is so wrong and they're talking down to me, like no one's really going to want to listen to that message. So I think it's all about the delivery. You don't want to make people feel like they're doing something wrong, but just sharing your journey and how you're feeling and your successes without tearing people down in the process.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great answer. Is there anything else you want to add to this conversation?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I hope I don't piss anybody off. I feel like there's just so much drama right now. Like there's a lot going on. I've had to mute a lot of people on Instagram because I'm like I can't consume all this right now. Like I muted people so when I'm ready I can go and see what they're doing because I'm not trying to have a closed mind. I still want to hear what people are saying, but we're not built to have all this information coming at us at one time, like with the internet. And someone else pointed this out where it's like you think about, I mean, 20 years ago, like when we didn't have the internet, you're just talking to your neighbor, you're on the phone, like you're not getting 1,000 opinions and information thrown at you at one day. So it's just like a lot. So I feel like, when things become a lot, there's a lot of noise, like we just kind of like need to take a step back and turn more like inside. Like I feel like I'm not giving myself enough credit and listening to myself. I'm letting the opinions of others like cloud my own judgment. Like, why am I listening to all these people on their internet and not myself? So I don't know where I was going. How did I get there?
I
Sorry.
think that's really good advice. I think that's really good advice. We are surrounded by a lot of noise, and people have different motives for sharing things online. And yeah, at the end of the day, I think like you said, going back to yourself, seeing how you feel, what your motives are, is the best thing that you can do. So I don't know if we solved any of the world's problems today with this conversation, but I do feel like it was a lot of fun, and I feel like just kind of chatting this back and forth has certainly helped me to kind of understand the situation a little bit better. And um, I think I'll have my recommendations moving forward for people. But yeah, it's tricky, and God bless anybody who does whatever they want and however they want to promote it. We certainly understand and still love anybody who is or is not considered part of the community. They're all friends of ours anyway, most of them. So whatever people decide to do is great. But when it comes to the individual person, you really have to be very careful about what you're doing, because like you have experience, you can bring back a lot of things that Carnivore can really help with. So Courtney, I always enjoy our time together. This has been really, really fun. I'm really glad you were willing to do this conversation with me today. For now, where would you like people to go to find you, connect with you and your work? And where would you like people to go to find your awesome cookbook?
Thank you. I'm on all the platforms. Exhausted doing that, let me tell you. So come say hi. I also have a free private Facebook group that I'm trying to like pour a little bit more love and attention into. So come join us on there. Right now, you can search it's Courtney Luna's Carnivore Community. My book, it's online on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, in select Barnes and Noble. So check the store locator before you go. Might find it in person. And I think that's it.
Awesome. That's fantastic. We will link to all of that in the show notes. You're right. Putting out stuff on social media is a bit exhausting, but you do a really, really nice job. So thank you again, Courtney. Like I said, I really enjoyed our time together. You have a really great insight about this stuff and a really open way of talking about it. So really appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time to do this and be on our show. Really, really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me again. It's an honor.
Of course, it was an honor to host you. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.